Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time and welcome to our channel. I've done extensive videos on our channel since the pandemic began. I've done extensive videos on stimulus proposals. I've done an extensive playlist on the unemployment benefits and how they've been evolving over the past year. And I want you to know that my goal is to give you the latest news when it comes to the country, the economy, as well as our money. In this video, I'm going to ask the question, has the unemployment benefits system failed us? Yes, you heard that right. Here's a headline of an article on your screen from Bloomberg. The US unemployment rescue system left at least 9 million of our fellow Americans without help. In other words, those who needed help the most did not get it. There was red tape. There was a lot of fraud, and all the efforts to prevent fraud actually left out legitimate seekers of unemployment benefits and overwhelmed agencies, understaffed agencies, outdated software systems, in many cases software systems that had not been updated for decades, in some cases 50 years, left many Americans without benefits. Here's some reporting from Bloomberg. And by the way, this is excellent reporting. We'll provide you with a link to this article in the description section below. There are 9 million Americans who were thrown out of work by the pandemic who didn't receive any unemployment benefits despite the largest deployment of economic aid in the history of the United States. And folks, this was based on data that was actually analyzed from the US Labor Department. So this is extremely shocking. That's a hole in the safety net, the size of the population of Virginia. I want our viewers and subscribers to know that 40 million of our fellow Americans, yes, you heard that right, 40 million of our fellow Americans were on unemployment benefits at one point or another in the year 2020. That is a significant portion of the workforce. And 9 million individuals simply did not get the unemployment benefits they deserved. This has become a major political debate because, as you know, the Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan. They made sure that $300 a week unemployment benefits were included all the way through September of this year. However, 25 Republican states have decided to end unemployment benefits early. In fact, there was a report from JP Morgan Chase that said that the end of the unemployment benefits was more political than economic because many of these Republican states that are ending unemployment benefits early actually had a lower hourly wage and had a higher unemployment rate than Democratic states. So there's definitely some politics involved here. Now, a lot of critics of these programs, of the unemployment benefits programs, say that these programs that were enacted during the pandemic may be undermining the recovery by discouraging unemployed Americans from looking for work. And this was challenged actually by many labor economists and top White House advisors. Now, a majority of the Republican states that are ending this unemployment benefits program are saying, hey, we need people to get back to work. There are businesses that simply cannot find people to work. Now, what is interesting is that half of the 64.3 million people who sought help through the regular unemployment benefit program from the start of March in 2020 through March 2021 were rejected or not paid. Now, think about this for a second. That's twice the rate during the Great Depression. Many of these individuals actually applied for the PUA program, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which was actually a program that was created by Congress as a direct result of the CARES Act to help those who were self-employed, to help those who were part-time workers or gig workers, because these workers did not have any kind of unemployment benefit prior to the CARES Act. Now, a lot of people were indeed helped. About 49 million workers, 49 million workers. This is the latest data from Bloomberg. This is even higher than the 40 million number that I reported earlier. About 49 million workers, that is 30% of the US workforce, received at least one unemployment benefit payment, according to data that was analyzed by Bloomberg. More than $750 billion in unemployment benefits have been paid by the US Treasury, compared with just $28 billion in 2019. However, there is a significant failure of the system. For example, California paid more than 70% of the claims for regular unemployment benefits during the 13 months starting in March 2020, while Montana did not pay benefits to 89% of those who applied. Think about that for a second. California paid out more than 70% of the claims that were filed, and Montana did not pay out claims for 89%. In other words, Montana only paid out benefits to 11% of those who applied. On top of that, the maximum payment ranges depending on which state you live in. The maximum payment ranges from $235 a week in a state like Mississippi to $855 in a state like Massachusetts. Almost all states offer 26 weeks of unemployment benefits, although in a state like Alabama, the limit is 14 weeks, and in a state like Florida, the limit is approximately 12 weeks. Here's a quote from Rebecca Dixon, who's the executive director at the National Employment Law Project, which is a research and advocacy group. She says, depending on where you live, when you lose your job, you either have a program that will help you bridge to your next job, or you're in danger of losing your apartment. So there is a lot of inconsistency, and also different states file data differently. Here's a quote from Senator Ron Wyden, who's a Democrat from Oregon, who chairs the Senate Finance Committee, and he's actually trying to push for higher benefits. He said this, I quote, "The unemployment system is broken. What he's trying to do is push for more generous benefits, a wider eligibility pool so more people are eligible, automatic adjustments, in other words, an automatic stabilizer during hard times. In other words, when the unemployment ratio increases in a state, the unemployment benefits should also automatically increase." Here's an interesting quote from Wyden. "State after state has sabotaged their unemployment system by making benefits as hard as possible to access." Let's take a look at this chart from the US Department of Labor that shows you the initial claims for regular unemployment insurance. And you'll see the black portion represents people who received the first payment, and the red portion represents people who did not receive the payment. You'll see that in 2020, the number of applications was significant, coming close to 50 million applications. And you'll see the number of people who never received the first payment. In Indiana, 1 out of every 3 people who applied for unemployment did not receive any help. And so this is again an extremely challenging situation for people who need help. Here's another chart on your screen that shows you missing benefits. This is data from March of 2020 through March of 2021. And this is first payment data from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. In fact, we have data for the entire country. And you can start to see that some states were really bad in paying out claims. This image shows you the share of claims that were not paid under the unemployment benefit program. The darker the color, the more likely it is that the state did not pay out unemployment benefits. In other words, the darker the color, the more challenges you had if you're living in that state collecting unemployment benefits. Take a look at Montana, for instance. Take a look at Nebraska, Arizona. So some of these states, Georgia, Ohio, Indiana, had significant problems as far as unemployment benefits are concerned. Now, what is happening here is that fraud also was a significant factor that really hurt a lot of people, and this fraud prevented legitimate seekers of unemployment benefits from actually getting their benefits. The result, some people had to vacate their apartments, some people couldn't afford medical care, some people essentially weren't even able to keep the lights on. In fact, delays in payments and denials have led to lawsuits in states like Nevada, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, and Virginia. The success of these lawsuits have been limited, but the lawsuits have done little to address the holes that have been created economically, and the lawsuits have done little to help fix bad credit scores that have been created as a result of individuals actually not being able to get unemployment benefits. In the end, some people really needed the money. Folks, it is my personal belief that those who need help the most should get it. This is easier said than done because both political parties need to see eye to eye. And in my opinion, the best ideas come from both sides. And when both sides find a middle ground, we move forward as a country. This isn't about a democratic safety net or a democratic idea of socialism versus a Republican idea of conservatism and a Republican idea of helping businesses. This is not about that. That's looking at this in a black and white way. The truth is gray. The truth hides in the shadows. We need to look at this and we need to speak to our elected officials so that we encourage them to come together to find a common pathway. Not everyone will get what they want, but in the end, the idea is to move forward and have progress so that in the future, the unemployment benefit system does what it is supposed to do, which is help those who need help the most. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. My name is Dr. Nitin Choda with Ignition Time. I want you to know that you are greatly appreciated. I work hard on this channel every single day, and I'll continue to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.